our, oh, there we go. We're starting up and recording. We'll start with a little bit of housekeeping real quick. This is recorded. There are a few slides I think we're going to roll through on this, but the webinar is being recorded. You're on mute, your video's off, but the chat button is here, and I see people have made good use of that, so thank you for that. And the Q&A is also here, so when we get to that part of the presentation, please use the Q&A. It'll probably be easier for us to roll through and understand that. We have live captioning available, so that you can get right at the bottom of your screen if you click on the CC button. The film, when we show it, we also have subtitles on it that Miles put together. So that's there. And then the chat function is also on your screen. You can see where that is, though I think most of you, as I'm seeing here, know how to use it. And the Q&A is a little bit next to that. So that part will be a little easier when we get to the questions and answers. So a quick word about us. I'm with PathPoint, a provider organization in Southern California. We're in 5 counties that have a combined population of about 12 million people. So seeing folks from around the country gives you a sense of kind of where we are. We support around a little over 2,500 people with developmental disabilities and mental health diagnoses, and young adults in a variety of different services. A few of our most recent things we'd highlight are assistive technology program. We have a lending library that we're going to be launching pretty soon. Project Search, we have 14 Project Search sites, and I saw in the chat that one of them, they're all calling in up in, I think, Camarillo or Westlake Village. And then in California, we have a self-determination program that we're quite involved in. Of the 2,500 people that we support, there are quite a few that have epilepsy or other seizure disorders, which is why we're so excited about Miles' project and being able to sponsor this film screening of Under the Lights. In America, there are 3.4 million people who have epilepsy, and 1 out of every 26 of us will develop epilepsy at some point in our lives. Per the Lanterman Act in California, epilepsy is a developmental disability, and this short film that we're going to show does show someone having a seizure. Miles has brought epilepsy into the forefront through his film, and as you'll hear probably a little later, his larger vision, pushing out the stigma and misinformation that's been in our society so long about epilepsy. Miles, a person with epilepsy and a self-advocate, is an experienced filmmaker, film festival awards around the world, including the Oscar-qualifying Rhode Island International Film Festival. And he's also an Academy Nickel screenwriting semifinalist. He's a passionate epilepsy advocate. He sits on the board of the Epilepsy Foundation of Northern California. And before I turn it over to him, I just wanted to share a few comments of some of the people who've already seen this film. Folks have been looking at it on YouTube and putting comments in. I'm just going to read a few because they really struck me. Here's one. This is honestly amazing. It made me cry. His words hit me hard when he said, "I just want to be normal. Gosh, I understand him to the heavens and beyond. Thank you for bringing the light to our condition." And here's another one. This was incredible and has me hardcore crying as an epileptic. This shows the real struggles that I've gone through, and it was real and raw and beautiful. Thank you. And one more. I'm 14, I have epilepsy. This is incredible. It's so real, something that finally shows almost exactly how I feel, as do so many others. So thank you so much for this. So thank you from me, Miles, for being here, for your work you've done. And I'll let you give a little bit of background about you and about the film, and then we're going to show it, and then we'll have the Q&A afterwards.
Absolutely. Thanks, Harry. So I'm Miles. Nice to meet you all. I see some familiar faces, and I'm just overwhelmed seeing just how many people are in the room. It's wonderful. This means a lot to me that you would all take the time. Like Harry said, I have epilepsy, and I've always had epilepsy since I was about 4 years old. And I fit into the 1/3 of epilepsy patients that do not respond well to medication. So I've always been very, very difficult to treat. And I still face many independence challenges. And I started getting involved in my community when I was a teenager. And I worked at a camp as a counselor for kids. It was just for kids who have epilepsy. And it was a very life-changing experience because I met all of these people who were roughly my age. These would be preteens and teens who would say things like, I have never made a friend before, which truly blew my mind because these were quote unquote regular kids. There was nothing about them that could possibly qualify them to, to make it that far into their lives without having ever made a friend. The stigma is so much more brutal than the disability. And that while we struggle so much to talk about seizures publicly, that it's a conversation that's not being had. The conversation that's really not being had is that the experience of having epilepsy is not so much about the seizures. It's the 99% of the time that you spend conscious between seizures dealing with a world that refuses to include you. And that's the story I wanted to tell. So I would get up and I would give talks like this since I was a teenager at, epilepsy awareness fundraising type events. And I'd get up on stage and I'd talk about how important awareness is. And eventually I came to recognize that everyone in the room either had epilepsy or they were there in support of someone with epilepsy. So this would be a quote unquote awareness event, but there was no awareness being raised. Money might be being raised, which was great for programs, support groups, the camp, things like that. But they were relatively ineffective for awareness purposes. And so as a filmmaker, going to film festivals, competing in events, what I came to notice was that the only space in our culture where people go out of their way to seek stories they haven't seen before is in movies and in television. It's where people want to spend their money to hear from something they know nothing about, to see something new. And the LGBTQIA community, people of color, they've made enormous strides in our world, getting the true story told about what it's like to be them through the medium of movies. And as people with disabilities, if we're going to be a part of a public conversation, if we're going to demand that people see us for what we are and not for what they've been told, we need to be using this medium. It's the most effective way, because you don't have to know me personally to know my story. You can know my story through an authentic fictional character. And then maybe if you see someone having a seizure, that will be your point of reference rather than the misconceptions that you've been told. And so that's why I made the film. And the goal was always to prove that something would happen. If we just put a 10-minute short out, something would happen, so that I could then make the feature length film. And I am developing it. And I believe that if it's done right, it would be the biggest, most effective awareness campaign ever for epilepsy. So as Harry mentioned, the response was pretty wild. Kids were sending in fan art a year before its release. People started sending in videos saying what it meant to them to be seen on screen. And it shows that that's the most important work that I can do as a filmmaker. And as an advocate. And so that's why I'm here. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you, Miles. Let's show the film. So we have a great back office group. Here we go.
Hello?
Please tell me this is the boys' room.
Okay, time to go.
Hey, is your hair wet?
Get out.
I can't.
Jesus. Come on. Ah! Oh my god! Ah! Okay.
I dislocated my shoulder.
I'll call somebody.
No,
I'll
don't.
call like an ambulance
No,
or
please
something.
don't.
I'm so sorry.
Don't.
I'm so sorry.
Do you know Shelby Powell? Can you go tell her that I'll be right out? And I didn't forget.
What's your emergency?
Yeah, this guy hurt his shoulder. Yeah, I think he needs help.
Hang up.
Are they
Hang up.
responding?
Yeah, he said he dislocated it.
Come on, hang up!
Why are you in here?
What's the address? Ma'am? Hello?
Please go talk to Shelby. She's saving a dance for me. Please, no ambulance. Look, I got this, I got this.
What? Stop! Stop! Stop!
They'll call my mom.
Are you kidding me?
I'm really not supposed to be here.
In the girls' bathroom. Imagine that.
At prom.
What? Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Stop! 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 Stop!
I got it.
What is your name? Do you even go here?
Your mascara's running.
So, my boyfriend making out with someone.
Sorry.
So? How many beers did it take to get you into the girls' bathroom?
I don't drink. I have seizures. It's a blindfold. I thought it would help with the light. I guess not. You can't tell anyone. You can't tell anyone, please.
Of course.
She's saving a dance for me.
Why don't you just hang here for a bit? Wait, no. No. Wait. Please come back. Wait, no, stop. If you stay in here, I'll talk to you.
Sam?
I gotta go, Mom.
Do you want to tell me where? Sam. Sam, will you tell me where you're going?
Hang up. No.
Sam, tell me it's not dangerous.
911, please state your emergency.
Okay. This guy's having a seizure.
Just make sure he's breathing and
Don't
don't
call
restrain him, okay?
Mom.
Sam?
Check to see if he's carrying any epilepsy medication.
It would kill her. It'll kill her.
What is your location?
We're at Sullivan Valley High.
An ambulance should be there within 3 minutes. Stay where you are, okay?
They say that they'll be here in 3 minutes. What do I do?
Just be here.
Why would you go to prom if you knew that the lights would make you have a seizure?
Because it's worth it.
A dumb dance is worth having a seizure?
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay.
I just want to be normal. One time. Once.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You didn't know.
I pulled the fire alarm. We've been together for 3 years and I couldn't take it. I'm sorry.
You can't just leave like a normal person.
I wouldn't blame you if you hated me for it.
It's kind of awesome, actually.
What?
It's badass. Who has a breakup story like that?
You're gonna have a seizure no matter what at this point, right? Do you want to go to prom with me? It's okay. It's okay. But only if you want to. You don't have to.
Could I borrow your phone? Hey, Mom. I know you're probably scared. I went to prom, Mom. Just like everybody else. It's just hard. I don't want to get hurt, but I'm tired of missing out. I know I'll never be a normal kid. But at least I don't have to wonder.
Miles, it's really hard to transition off of watching that. And I've seen that many times at this point, and I'm moved by it every single time. And I'm seeing lots and lots of comments coming in. Oh my God, I'm in tears. Amazing, touching, powerful. That was so sad and so powerful. Thank you. Amazing. Very well done. Beautifully filmed. Who cut the onions? Volunteers. Hi, Miles. I don't have epilepsy, but wanting to learn. Thank you so much. A lot of thanks here. I was crying like a baby. Thank you for opening our eyes and minds. I wish every high school student could see this film.
Me too.
Yeah. I don't think I have the words to do justice to how moving the film is. Amazing in a 9-minute movie how this you could do this. We all loved it. Such a powerful message that's coming from one of the groups I think watching today. Thanks for sharing such an amazing story. I'm curious, and as people will start putting in questions, how this related to sort of your own real experiences and where you came up with ideas of focusing at such a powerful moment, high school prom, which is supposed to be one of those seminal moments in most people's lives. Did that come from personal experience, or did that something you synthesized to do? Because you wrote this as well as directed it.
That's right. Yeah. And I want to remind people there's a Q&A button down to the right of the chat, so it makes it easier for us to see your questions. Yeah, I chose prom as a subject because when you make a story that's so specific to such a specific experience, it's important to make it accessible. If the idea is to make it something that other communities can relate to and understand, and no one, most people have felt the experience of wanting to go to prom, and everyone at some time experiences what it feels like to be left out, to be excluded, to be told that you can't. And so I use that as the subject matter, and I chose prom because it's a coming of age moment that really only happens once, happens twice if at some schools, but it's a moment to be special, to feel grown up, to look sharp, and if you don't jump on it, it doesn't come back. And that's something that most people can understand. So I chose prom for that reason, but also because it was a specific event that would be difficult for a person with photosensitive epilepsy, right? So it fits the narrative well. I did go to prom. My epilepsy is not photosensitive, but they say there are something like 40 different kinds of epilepsy. If I made a story that featured all 40 different kinds of epilepsy, I would be representing no one. So what I resorted to was I decided, this is not a biography, but it is my experience of what it feels like to have epilepsy. And that is something that, as I've said before, you can, that is universal for people with disabilities and with people who don't.
Yeah, and I imagine from some of the comments that people are thinking about this in terms of other disabilities as well, and giving a voice to folks who felt left out or weren't able to fully participate.
Yeah.
Even though it's epilepsy, you have a broader, meaning for a lot of folks. We're getting a bunch of questions in. Susan asked about at what point did you decide to make the movie?
Yeah, so I had made films before, largely comedies, like irreverent type stuff. And I shied away from telling an epilepsy story for a long time because I didn't think it would be meaningful, or I didn't know that I didn't know that digging into my personal stuff would be particularly an enjoyable or useful experience. And then I began to learn that it really does require, if you have a voice, you have to use it, because there are so many people who are not ready to speak up, and we all have to be speaking up for this to move forward, for us to live in a better world. And so if you are able to, you need to. And so I took the challenge of saying, all right, well, if I can put something on screen that is hard for me to share, then it will be good. You know, that's how good stories are told. You can always feel when a story is not authentic because someone is using subject matter that they're not well read on, you know. But if it's something that you're afraid to share, people feel on a deep human level inclined to listen, and that's what makes art work. So I didn't write it down unless it made me laugh, and I didn't write it down unless it made me cry, and that's where the script was born. And I've since done the same thing with the feature.
Yeah, that takes a special kind of courage, though, and I really applaud you for that. It's one thing to make movies of other things. It's another to make a movie about something that's so personal and so intrinsic of who you are, and putting yourself out there, which you're doing here in front of a couple hundred people and many thousands more who are seeing this. So a huge applause to you there. And you mentioned the feature, and we have a couple questions about that.
Yeah.
One, someone asking, how can we support your development? And someone else saying they're hopeful we'll be able to work on a project in the future around this. So where where are you taking this?
Yeah, so the feature is written. You mentioned it placed in the top 1% of 8,200 screenplays worldwide in the Academy Nickel Fellowship, which is effectively an Academy Award. It is the screenwriting competition that the Academy runs. And so what is exciting about that is it shows just how much the public wants to see a story like this. So I've got my producers, I've got my team together, and we're just raising the money. That's all we need. So if this moved you, and if you please show someone, the film's on YouTube, show it to someone. If you know someone who could help us make this feature possible, help us get the money together, I need your help. That's the only thing stopping us, is that we have to raise the funds. And it simply will be the biggest thing for epilepsy awareness ever, because the world is ready and because we do have the team for it. And the script's good. The script goes into the family nuances, which is, like I said before, the really truly untold story is, what's it like to be mom? You know, what's it like to be a classmate that's really confused about this and is not handling it well? Epilepsy is more than just the patient. You mentioned there's 3.4 million people in America who have epilepsy, but the millions of lives that are touched by epilepsy, of people who are navigating epilepsy, is exponentially more. And that's what really makes this a story for most of the country. Is everyone can relate to something like that. Let's see. I made the short we shot it in 2018, and then it had a pretty long life on the festival circuit, playing film festivals around the country. And so I just now released it a couple weeks ago on YouTube. But yeah, another way you can support the feature is we have a tax deductible donation link, and I'll put that in the chat now, of just raising just a grassroots effort to put money together so we can do things like, you know, start with a casting director and you know, put the basic groundwork together to make the movie happen. I actually love one of these first questions from Alan. I believe I'm saying your name right. How can this be a sad movie and not a happy movie? I made a decision that, and there was a lot of pressure when writing the script, of a lot of people said, they go to prom. They need to be smiling, they need to be laughing, and that they did it and they got there and it's happy. And we shot it both ways. My producers really bullied me into making what I call the Candyland ending that you so often see in disability related movies, where the disability is quote unquote overcome, that the disability is no longer a problem and everyone's life is the same and it's over. And I think it's a dangerous message. There's such an opportunity to get people to think about the implications of a disability and to send them home going, They were fine. It's fine. I think sort of takes away from that. So I didn't want to make a tragic ending where he goes home with no experience. I wanted to send the message that when you have a disability, you have to get creative about your accommodations. And usually all it takes to have your version of your dream is to have someone listening. And so I wanted to show a story where the character does get the closest possible thing to what everyone else has because someone was willing to listen. And she doesn't start out that way, but eventually she's listening. And I also didn't want to create a bully character. You know, I feel like that's so overdone and so ineffective. No one identifies with the bully, but people identify with the character that needs to be patient and needs to learn, needs to listen. And so that's what I decided to go with. The happy Candyland ending version was so bad I cried in the shower at how bad my movie was. I remember that distinctly.
That's great. You're getting some really great questions. Trying to see both the chat and the Q&A. Here's one from Teresa. What advice would you offer to teens who are trying to balance their desire to fit in and their parents' fear? She said she was really moved by the concern he had for his mom's fear, even though obviously he didn't listen to her direction.
Yeah, I was responding to a question. The parents' story regarding epilepsy really isn't seen. And when I think about how impacted my parents have been because of my experience, you know, every waking hour of their lives since I was diagnosed at 4 years old has been impacted. And when you're a patient, you're aware of that sort of thing. And there's a lot of guilt about, you know, feeling like a burden for many people with disabilities, you know, but also acknowledging other people's pain. And to make a decision to put yourself in harm's way because of something you so desperately want, and then understanding the implications for the world around you is so hard. How many kids with epilepsy have been told they can't go to prom because it will ruin it for other kids? You know, think how does that feel? You know, that's part of the epilepsy story, and it should be talked about.
It's a broader story too. I mean, we see that all the time with, I mean, all of us who are parents have some version of that with our children, and especially if our children have disabilities, because it's a constant of wanting to keep someone safe versus letting them experience the world, which may have challenges for them, as we saw in the film.
Oh, I noticed that my links have not gone to the right place. I've just been sending them to panel.
Oh, got it.
Okay.
Hey.
So everybody, okay, so this is, if you're interested, there's a donate link, it's tax deductible, and it's here, and then there's a website as well. And if you put your email in there, you'll get information on the feature, underthelightsfilm.com. So that's in the chat now.
Nice. And is that how people can get to the movie as well, if they want to watch it or show it to their friends, or, you know, I saw some comments, yeah.
Yeah, you can see the film there as well as YouTube. Yeah, okay, let's keep looking through here. This is so cool. Sometimes that, you know, it takes a while for people to wake up and like be willing to give a question. Yes, another way to support, if you're interested, we need attachments, and that's Hollywood language for actors. You know, like the more powerful the actor, the more the press comes to the film, which is something that just simply doesn't happen for epilepsy and the disability community in general. But it also means people with leverage who can just put their name on it and kind of forget about it. You know, that's something Hollywood does as well, is that someone just says, yeah, whatever, just call me executive producer. And then all of a sudden you can go and raise money, you know? So we're looking for those kinds of people. So hell, if your uncle is somebody, please let me know. Yeah. Making the movie, what it was like to make the movie. There's this really crazy experience as a director where you see it in your head when you're writing it, but then there's this really brief moment where you're standing with your characters and they're living, breathing people. standing next to you, which is, it's a very transcendent, pretty wild experience. And to watch someone who I worked so closely with to get the epilepsy exactly the way it feels for me, every movement, the emotion of it. My job is to make sure that that is communicated authentically and to not put an actor on stage, whether they have epilepsy in real life or not, without lampooning or getting the experience wrong is critical. And working with someone, having to communicate epilepsy on such a granular level, down to like, what do every muscle in my body feel like, and to have them get it right. And then when he nailed it in the performance you saw, seeing tears in the crew was really, really powerful. And my epilepsy gets me down sometimes, but I've never wept, and it just broke me. And that was a really cool experience to have. Advice for teens. Trying to balance their desire to fit in and their parents' fear. I think it's a family conversation. My parents have always just offered me so much encouragement, saying, we will do whatever it takes, as long as you tell us what it is that you want. And that's why I would fantasize about doing things like in this movie, but I felt comfortable asking for help and not feeling bad about it. And they didn't make me feel bad about it, and it's just communication. There are things that I will never do, but through communicating with people I love that are willing to support me and trying my best to be confident about it. And it is hard to ask for someone to treat you differently in order to have what you need. That takes practice, both for the parent and for I want my parents to also be reaching out and finding support. Is really critical. What else have we got here?
There's another one that's sort of similar to that about someone says, do you have suggestions to support the social aspect of a child with epilepsy? She has a 10-year-old nephew that was recently diagnosed, and the nephew is now all of a sudden more quiet and distant. So any advice for the parents or the family members?
I'm trying to find this one.
It's in the Q&A near about 5 up from the bottom.
Okay. Yeah.
It's from an anonymous.
Yeah, this is tough because it's also not just the parent and the child, it's the school.
Yeah. And
they don't always understand. And I think that a lot of times, like, parents need to take those people aside, and it's remarkable, but and this is something that PathPoint knows a lot about, is that schools need to be reminded of their obligations and the things that they are required to do, the accommodations that they are required to give. All of those sorts of things build a sense of confidence. But with someone newly diagnosed, a disability, often it feels like it takes the first place in the hierarchy of your identity, that this is what I am now. And that's a really, really difficult thing to deteriorate and to reverse. And for people with disabilities, and I can't speak for every disability, but I think this is true and not unique to disabilities, is that one way or another, you have to get a self-narrative going, a list of the things that you are, that you like. And that might be something as simple as, I'm a good friend, or I'm a good listener. I like to garden. I like listening to music. I like playing music. I like to knit. And in trying to spend the time that you have on the things that you like, and in my case, where I really succeeded most was trying to spend times on things I wanted to be. I wanted to make films. I wanted to be a filmmaker. And investing time there, eventually the disability becomes second position. which is an enormous accomplishment. And eventually a person gets from, I have epilepsy and I'm Miles, and so on and so forth, to I'm Miles, I like making films, and I also have epilepsy. And that was a major shift for me.
And that's a hard shift, especially in that, question, someone recently diagnosed, but it's great advice that transcends what's going on there. There are some questions in here about your own experience with seizures, particularly in high school.
Yeah, I absolutely, I've, had epilepsy since I was 4. I started having grand mal or tonic-clonic seizures, as they're known, and I was about 15. And that has always, in the time in between seizures is what's impacts most of your world. Not being able to drive, I'm 27 now. Not ever having driven has an immense impact on your sense of self and the things you've experienced. On the playground at age 6, it wasn't such a big deal. It wasn't such a big deal, but eventually the amount of things that you've missed out on start to stack up to a point where you feel the need to explain yourself all the time. You feel the need to overshare information for fear that you won't be believed. Your experience becomes so much more diverse than the average. There's no average experience, but you understand what I'm saying, that you start to feel like maybe people won't believe you or won't listen to you. And then sometimes in doing that and oversharing, then you feel like, oh no, and now I made it worse. And it's tough. There become more and more things that you have to ask for help for. No, I can't stay out. I have to go home. Can you give me a ride? I can't meet you there because Uber can't get me out. It's, working from home has been huge because Uber alone takes such a huge chunk of your paycheck going to and from work. It starts to stack up, so you have to shape your life around the things that you're good at and the things you can do. Film is not a great career choice for me. I've missed a lot of opportunities because I have to ask for accommodations that most people don't have to ask for. So in making my own work, I build an accommodating experience that isn't a problem for me. And so that's really my path forward, is in telling the stories that I want to tell. And that's worked out pretty well so far.
You certainly see as you're speaking about how powerful high school prom is in this story, because that's where, in some ways, the wanting to fit in is so important for young people. And yeah, I mean, what a powerful, thank you for sharing that part of your story. And someone wrote in of another film you could do, a 27-year-old who's never driven, which is part of your piece there. There are a lot of comments. People are coming, and I don't know, we're going to save the chat. We'll save the Q&A because you're getting a lot of leads for all kinds of things. People want to help you make this movie. How do people get in touch with you if they want to follow up afterwards?
Yeah, so I'm at Miles at underthelightsfilm.com in the chat. You can also find me on social media. Instagram, namely, is probably the best one. Instagram at Under the Lights Film, and there's a Facebook page as well. Those are probably the best ways. Is if you just send me a message on Facebook. Facebook doesn't like to get that all the way to you. They put it in purgatory. There's so many good things here. The next film is obviously the feature film of Under the Lights. And then what do I hope the audience gathers from watching this? There's Carlos Quesada at Epilepsy Foundation of Northern California has this great phrase, a picture, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, a movie's worth 1,000,000. right? Because how many images are in it, right? Movies live forever. And so my hope is that, like, for example, so many people have shown up today and hearing what I have to say, and that's a huge opportunity. But when a film exists, I don't have to be there to give the talk, right? Someone can go and they can experience it alone in their room and take away, have it feel something for someone like me without having ever met me. And then when they meet someone like me, then that's their point of reference, as opposed to the hospital shows they've seen where a seizure is used strictly as a device to scare you, or horror movies that use seizures as in line with things like possession, and again, a moment that's intended to scare you. That's the point of reference in America for epilepsy right now. That's what people have seen when they think of seizure. I distinctly remember being at camp. I went for several years before a kid actually had a seizure in front of me. And it was my job to deal with it. And we had been shown videos of kids having seizures, and it was so scary. And even as a person with epilepsy, I thought, it's so weird that I feel afraid of this. And then a kid has a seizure in front of me, and it had been so over-explained to me, like what to do when someone has a seizure. It's what I said in the film. You just have to be there. They just sit there on their side and they're breathing. And most of the time, that's all you have to do is just be there. That's all. And that's what I did. This kid had a seizure, lasted 30 seconds. I sat there with him. And I remember this distinct feeling of, that's it. That's it. He's going to be okay. And that is the case for most seizures. And I want the audience to walk away with that is that, like I said before, all he really needs is for someone to be patient. And if people can treat us with that amount of patience, then it makes the seizures themselves a lot more easy to live with. And that's what I want for the world. I think it'll take a few really solid movies and we'll be done with stigma as we see it today in the current state that it is within a few years. But it's going to take that level of awareness, and it is going to take that level of public conversation.
Has anything like this been done before? I mean, when you got into it, you looked around. Has epilepsy and seizures been put into feature films?
There's a man, his name's Dr. Ian Bone. You should look him up. He's studied specifically epilepsy in film representation. And he came up with, within a short amount of time, there were 150, depictions of seizures, and 50 of them were totally incorrect. And I have seen films featuring epilepsy. And again, most of them, the seizure is the climactic, scary moment that is meant to make you think, oh my God, this person's going to die, which is incredibly dangerous message to send the public. Foaming at the mouth, writhing on the floor, that kind of thing. And it's absolutely not based on any kind of empathy. Seizures are commonly equated with drug use for that reason, that we usually see on screen someone's doing drugs and then they have a seizure, or they've got a needle in their arm or something to that effect. And so the stigmas are sort of cohabitating from different mental health. It's a completely different issue, but it cohabitates because of the way we see it. There's one film that you can find on Amazon called Electricity, which is a really cool film from the UK about someone living with epilepsy. And I like a lot of things of the way that film depicts epilepsy, but I really want to focus more on the family and sort of what happens in the time between. I've been advised for so long not to tell a story that focuses specifically on epilepsy because no one will care. And it's obviously not the case. A lot of times films use epilepsy as the B story. It's the side plot of this character is trying to do X, and the epilepsy is a factor in the story, but they're trying to, you know, like rob a bank or whatever, right? And there was a film recently by Oscar winner Chloe Zhao where this guy is trying to be a rodeo rider. That's his dream, but he's having seizures and partial seizures, I believe. And the opportunity was completely missed. They never say the word epilepsy in the movie. And so it gets kind of tossed aside. So I really don't believe the story has been told quite this way.
Well, what you're kind of hinting on it, you talked at the beginning about the power of film, right? You just did a few moments ago, a million words in a film, but if it's used the wrong way, it can reinforce really bad stigmas. And if there are 50 movies out there that show it really, really awful in a bad way, that's a lot to overcome. So kudos to you and for putting something out there that will be an authentic representation of what really happens and destigmatize. I mean, what a great mission that you're on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And that the proof already exists. If you look at Alzheimer's, which affects fewer people by far than epilepsy, it's a great canary in the coal mine for something like this, that you don't have to know someone or have a family member living with Alzheimer's in order to empathize with it. That there isn't much of a stigma, but there is a great deal of empathy for that experience, because just about every character over the age of 75 in a movie presents memory issues. And so you've seen it before, you've cared for it before. You don't have to meet that person before, you know, you care about it. There's this great study where, you know, we never feel this way because of the way the world is and how dark world events are. But statistically speaking, we live in the most peaceful time in human history. And when you, which is, I know, a little disappointing, but when you look at the reasons why, the studies show that one of the biggest advances forward was the advent of narrative fiction. That once people could read stories about people that they would never meet, or people that they didn't have direct interactions with, but they felt for that kind of person, that over time, the world starts to care more about each other without having to have that direct interaction, just developing the idea that people deserve to be listened to and cared for and treated equally. If you never left your village and you only had, you know, your direct group, you wouldn't give a damn about who lived next to you. But once that came about, it started to change the world, and that's still the way forward.
And that's what film is doing, of course, now with you. And I see you are yourself now becoming this real advocate and spokesperson. And for instance, I see a question up here that I'm sure you get these kind of questions quite a bit, but what should you do if you live on your own and you have epilepsy? I mean, these are kind of basic epilepsy education questions, and you're out here as a resource to help people learn.
Yeah, whether I intended, this is what I do now. I think it's really important that people see a specialist. There's a lot of doctors out there who know a lot, but it's imperative that you see a specialist. Just people just don't have all the information, and epilepsy is so specific that it really truly does require that. You know, rescue medications are getting better and better, that are fast, you know, that are nasal based, things like that. You know, but living alone, you know, I think there's something wonderful about living with a roommate, you know, for people. It's, you know, I wouldn't for myself choose to live alone. Having someone around who cares about you is always a plus. And I think that's important, and people should recognize that is something that they should be able to expect. You know, you should be able to find that person, whether that's a family member or otherwise. even if you're going to Craigslist, even though if you communicate it well, you should be able to set a boundary and find someone who will accommodate. I mean, I see people have success.
Yeah, and I think your first thing you said was talk to your doctor and make sure, because something I didn't know until you started speaking 45 minutes ago is there are 40 different types of epilepsy, right? So lots of different aspects and people have different pieces of it. So working on your own part. Sometimes we lump things into a big box, but there are really a lot of different angles to it. And each person's situation may be a little different. I realize we're just about the end of time. I'm going to say a few thank yous and then let Miles do a final message he wants to share with everyone. But a big thank you for everyone who came on. We had over 200 people participating. We will send out the link to the recording, and we'll send out the links that Miles shared in the chat so people can follow up with that. A huge thank you to Lauren and Rebecca in the background making this all work. And my biggest thank you, of course, to Miles for not only coming on today, but really for what you're doing. You are an inspiration. I know there's so many of us really appreciating all that you're doing. And we're here behind you. We want to support you, and we'll give you the last word of the day.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is really, really a cool thing to do. And I'm appreciating everybody's engagement on this. I really believe that it'll be our saving grace. Cinema is the most powerful messaging platform that exists. More so than social media gets a lot of credit, for communication. Cinema is the only thing that can mass distribute empathy, which is the only cure for cruelty. There is no pill. This is what I want people to remember. There is no pill for cruelty. There may one day, maybe, be a cure for epilepsy. There will never be a pill for cruelty. Empathy is the only pill for human shortcomings. And that is what cinema accomplishes. So if you loved the short, like, it is on YouTube, it is on the website, underthelightsfilm.com. You can reach out to me, please. If you have ideas on how to brainstorm about how to, get the money together for the feature, I'd really love to hear it. And on the website, there's a donation link if you can contribute anything. And I do appreciate it. Thanks for having me, everybody.
Oh, thank you so much. I loved your last message. Empathy for all, kindness. Thank you. Thanks everyone for being part of this. Bye, everyone.